Hey guys, to everyone that's here with us today, thanks for joining us on another of our free webinars leading up to um, the soccer convention this year digitally in December. And unfortunately, we're not able to join all together in Miami, but there's always next year. Today we have Jack Collison, who's nice enough to spare some time. I hope you're doing well, Jack. And I know you had a couple of rough weeks.
Yeah, hopefully over it all now anyway. So, no, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And I actually, throughout this whole pandemic, met Jack through my move in LA Galaxy through Sam Elsbeth. So, in one of these many friendships that you make online through webinars, WhatsApp, trying to put the time together. So, thanks, Jack, for being a good sport and joining us today. I'm excited to hear some of your journey.
Nice one. Perfect. Right, should I crack on, Eric?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Excellent.
I'll interrupt you on the way, and please feel free. You should be good to share your screen.
Perfect. Yeah. This. There we go. Has that come up okay for everyone?
Yeah. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, well, first and foremost, thanks very much for having me on tonight. Really appreciate it. And I mean, over this period, I've done quite a lot of these things. And for me, I think they always work better if they're a bit interactive. So if at any point you need to stop me or ask any questions or need more detail around anything, yeah, just jump in and hopefully I'll be able to give you that. I'm not going to spend too long going through this, but hopefully there's one or two things that maybe you like or just might provoke a few thoughts in terms of what you guys are up to at your clubs and where you're at currently. So I thought it's always good to introduce myself, give myself a bit of background and maybe talk a little bit about my journey. And then I'll do a little bit the stuff we're doing at Atlanta at the moment with my U17s. Talk a little bit about my time at West Ham as a youth coach there because the approach was very different. And then just try and bring it together with a couple of final thoughts and hopefully we can have a few questions and have a bit of a chat.
Brilliant, Jack.
No problem. So in terms of my background, there we go. So fortunate enough to have a good, fairly decent playing career. Played for some good clubs, West Ham, Wigan, Bournemouth and Peterborough. And also lucky enough to be a full Welsh international, so to play for my country at under 21 and full senior level. And then in terms of my coaching, I'll go through this in a little bit more detail on the next slide. I've been the lead coach at Peterborough with their under 18s, then went back to West Ham and worked with their under 14s and 16s. In my final year, I was lead coach for the 18s. And then decided to take a bit of a risk, I suppose, and try something completely different and come over here and currently working with Atlanta United's under 17s. In terms of my licenses, I just finished my pro license this year. So really pleased that I could get that done and sort of over the line. And now it's just about continuing to develop and obviously try and continue along my journey. So a little bit about me. I think it's always nice to try and get to know a little bit about the person who's normally talking. So picture me there with my dad at probably 5 years old, I think I was. But I was completely obsessed with the game from a tiny age. I was a strange kid who took a football to bed sort of most nights and was dribbling to school with a ball and out in the garden till it was pitch black. So certainly had that love for the game from 4 or 5 years old, and mainly due to my dad. And that's something that sort of stayed with me forever and is obviously still burning very bright now, that real sort of passion and love for it. As I said on the last slide, I was quite lucky to sort of turn that obsession into a career and got to obviously play in the Premier League and play on an international scene against some of the best players in the world at some amazing stadiums. And Thankfully now I got to play under some really great managers, so obviously got to steal some good ideas and certain ways to work. I think this picture was taken at 20 years old. I mean, the only disappointing thing was that I was never really fit after this point. So I have a fairly short career, but I made it to the age of 26 when I actually had to call it a day full time. I think I had 5 or 6 operations on my knee and just couldn't continue. And I suppose at that age, at 26, I come to a little bit of a crossroads in terms of what I wanted to do and where I kind of wanted to go with it. Did I want to stay in the game or did I want to do something completely different? And I mean, thankfully, I fell onto coaching and that new passion sort of, it really captured me and sort of that's the thing that drives me and makes me want to get out of bed and obviously get better now. So jumped straight in, as I said, at Peterborough, then moved back to West Ham, where I had a couple of really good years. And as I said, this time last year, finally made the jump and come out here to Atlanta, completely different country, different culture, and obviously the sport's at quite different stages. So yeah, I thought it was something I really wanted to do, and it's something I'm really enjoying at the moment.
Also, Jack, let me ask you about the last piece before you dive into some of the technicalities. So what were some of the things in your thought process of making that move to come over to Wilmary?
Yeah, do you know what? It's a good question, and obviously it was a big decision for me. But I'd been at West Ham for 10 years as a young youth team player at 16 and made my way through the reserves into the first team. Spent years there playing and then come back as a coach. So being there for so long, I suppose I felt a little bit comfortable. And where I was so early on in my coaching journey, I was only sort of 4 or 5 years into my coaching journey, I felt I needed to get out and take a risk and try something different just to make sure I wasn't sitting still and getting stale. And I just feel like there's so much for me to learn and to try and go and embrace a completely new culture. And obviously work at a fantastic club in the MLS that's obviously growing so rapidly. It was too good an opportunity to turn down.
Oh, it's actually a great, vision to have, and not everyone is, let's say, brave enough to, take in a challenge, a new challenge, because coaching is so different than playing, and then creating more obstacles or more challenges for yourself, as you say, for culture, new country, in a different stage, in its history. So it's pretty impressive,
I appreciate it. No, I don't. I'm one of them. I don't like getting comfortable. I like to sort of step outside the comfort zone, and it was probably at the right age for me at sort of 30, 31, where obviously I've still got an awful lot to learn. So it just felt like it was the right time to come and do it. And obviously it's a great lifestyle as well for the wife and the kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, shall I crack on with some of this, Eric?
Go ahead.
Happy days. So, just thought I'd go through some of the stuff that we're currently doing at Atlanta United. Obviously, our goals for me at the moment, working in youth development, is to try and help produce footballers for the first team. So it's quite an interesting way to work, and thankfully a lot of it aligns with my thoughts of how the game should be played, and certainly lots of it in terms of how we're trying to produce player fits in with my thoughts and my feelings. So it's a pretty good match. So just thought I'd talk for our game model, to be honest, to begin with. So for us, obviously we've broken it down into game phases, which I'll go through on the next slides. From that, we've got principles of play, and then it's broken down into game actions, which I'll talk through. And obviously I'm happy to send you these slides. But ultimately, as I said, working in youth development, our aim's to try and produce young professionals. And I mean, this year has been great for me. Tyler Wolf, the lad there, one of my U17s, has been playing for the first team last few games. So he's got 4 or 5 appearances under his belt now. And it's been really pleasing to see sort of 5 or 6 of the lads that I had last year make their USL debuts. So they've made their professional debut as well. But we're quite lucky at Atlanta. They've trying to get a consistent theme now throughout. the entire academy, but also linking it to the first team and how they want to play and how they're going to try and play long term. Because obviously it's great for us to try and produce players that can sort of go into the system straight away, and it's kind of an easier transition for them. So in terms of the game phases, really simple. I'm sure you guys have seen lots of sort of stuff like this and lots of different wording. So this is just what we use at the club. So in the bottom third, start the attack, mid third, create the attack, and obviously the final third, we're looking to finish. The other way round, as a club and as a team, we like to try and be quite aggressive with our press. So you can see the press, anything in that top half is an area where we will try and press the ball 9 times out of 10. If not, getting organised, and then finally in and around the 18-yard box, obviously doing whatever we can to try and protect. So as I said, from the game phases, we've then broken it down. Probably a bit of a better slide for you guys, because you can see the press at the top's then broken down into 2 principles of play. So really simple: press. Do we press to win the ball, block to force a mistake? And then from that, broken down to sort of 2 game actions. And the game actions is the stuff that we obviously look for in our players as individuals, and stuff that we're working towards in our actual sessions with our team. And as I said, look, I'm not going to go through it all completely. I'm happy to share the slides at the end.
Or is it? It's actually, obviously everyone kind of has their own game model document, and especially here in the US, you've seen a million different types with different languages and the terminology, and especially in the US, where there's usually been in the federation that we've had the Dutch, the Germans, the French.
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems like it's so complicated because of the terminology and all of these actions and principles, but then just seeing the field, how it's divided there, and how simple the game actually is, and how that's going to translate to the player. It's very interesting, club at this level, how simple.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the problem we have sometimes at coaches, is that we actually complicate it too much. And it'll be interesting when I show you some of the slides from the West Ham stuff, because in terms of game model and things like that, it's completely different to how it looks here. So for me personally, it's been great to obviously come and try and work off a more sort of rigid game model and how we want to play, whereas before, the previous club that I was at was completely different and more of a free-for-all. But no, obviously I've seen lots of stuff like this, and it's actually I think, yeah, we've tried to simplify it and make it as easy as possible, and hopefully we can translate that onto the pitch and onto the kids. So here's the attacking, obviously switching it around just to give you an idea of the attacking stuff. So really simple again, the 3 phases of the game broken down into 1 or 2 principles, and obviously 2 game actions for each thing. And hopefully within that we get to cover as much of the game as possible. And yeah, it doesn't, as I said, sometimes the wording or the terminology can make it seem a bit complicated, but ultimately it isn't too complicated. We're trying to equip these boys and give them the tools that they need to obviously go in and hopefully have a long and successful career in the game. So just thought I'd share a general week with you guys as well, just so you can get an idea of obviously how we're working. So just from a Saturdays to Saturday, I'm sure you lot know, working in football, it's never as clean cut as this. There'll be games on a Sunday or midweek games, or especially at the moment with the COVID, you miss 2 or 3 days of training here and there. But in an ideal world, this is how we kind of want to work. So obviously, if we played on Saturday, Sunday would be a day off. Monday we'd do what's called a flex session. So a flex session for us is kind of the coach's choice. And I use Monday quite often as kind of a recap day from the weekend. So some areas we maybe weren't great at, some things that we might want to fix and touch on. And normally Monday I would do a video session pre-training just to show them a few things. And it's not always negative stuff. Sometimes it's in being fantastic and then going out trying to work on that. And sometimes it might be things that we do need to work on, and just trying to show them maybe on the video and then translate it onto the pitch. Then we get our principal days. So the principles we spoke about on the page before. So normally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we'd work on certain principles. And that's quite a rigid syllabus that we work on. We try and touch each principle for 2 weeks at a time and then move on to the next one. So that Monday session is really important to get different bits in. And then on Friday is more of a sort of game model session. So we might probably spend a bit of time working on how we're going to play on the weekend. Sometimes we touch on the opposition a little bit, and normally watch a little bit of film, but as a U17 coach, try not to get too bogged down on analysis of the opposition and focusing on opposition, because ultimately the focus should be on us, I feel, as a group and my team and my players and how they're improving and how we want them to work, rather than having a big focus on the opposition. And obviously Saturday will be a match. I haven't gone too much into the periodization stuff, but obviously we have to train in 5 days on the bounce. We have to be a bit careful with the boys. So normally Monday's almost like a second day recovery, so the session wouldn't be too intense. We have our loading days Tuesday, Wednesday, where we get quite a lot of work into them and obviously do stuff over larger areas, etc. And then Thursday and Friday we just taper it down and hoping they're sort of fresh and ready to go into the game on the weekend.
Ask you something, Jack, and in terms of, you know, this age player, comparing the US to the UK in terms of their lifestyle, you know, because obviously you see the week here,
Yeah.
but not every club obviously has all the access that clubs like the Galaxy, like Atlanta has.
Yeah.
You have kids in, you know, lower clubs that maybe even play a different sport, that they come straight from school and have other activities. What do you think are some, you know, differences in the mind of these kids that are trying to become, you know, make that jump like Wolf did for you guys here versus in England?
Do you know what? It's a great question, because I get asked this quite a lot, and I would say probably the biggest difference that I notice in the kids from here to the UK is every kid within an academy in England thinks they're going to be a professional footballer. That's all they've got their heart set on. Everything's focused around them trying to become a professional. They eat, live, sleep, train football. Whereas over here, I think where it's still building, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's still building and getting bigger. And I think trying to give these kids that sort of vision that, hold up, you could actually make a career out of this game. I mean, a lot of them, they want to go to college, which is great. And if we can help them along that sort of journey, fantastic. But then you see the one or two have sort of really got that laser focus that football is their ultimate, football's their everything. Okay, if they've been at school all day, they're still there an hour before training. They're preparing, they're doing everything properly. And you still find them kids out here have got that laser focus. It's just maybe some of the others trying to sort of sell them the dream and make them aware that, hold up, you're in a professional environment here. You've got real opportunity and you've got the tools to sort of go on and possibly make a career playing one of the best games in the world.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like also in South America, I think the mindset is different. Also, it's not only my dream is to play football, but my salvation is to play football. It's what will save me from the life maybe my parents had or that I'm destined to have. So it's definitely a different animal in the States, like you said, with different options, you know, because even taking a playing route, you can still go to college and then decide, okay, I'll focus on this or that. So it's an ever-changing animal.
Yeah, I think as coaches as well, we need to be a little bit careful. We don't want to over professionalize it too early on as well. I think sort of still at 13, 14, 15, you still want them playing other sports and still having time to have a social life, etc. But as they're getting more towards the top end, sort of 16, 17, 18, then I think it does become important that sort of football is their main focus. And do you know what I mean? They either really commit to it or maybe look elsewhere. I think it's just about being honest and kind of having them open conversations with them and kind of letting them know where they're at as much as possible.
Really? Go ahead.
Where are we? Also within that week, just a couple of things might be interesting, it might not. So this year, one of them sessions a week must be, the whole focus must be on transition. As a club, obviously, we want to be good in them moments when the ball turns over, both attacking and being able to defend, because the way we want to try and play, we want to be expansive, we want to be big, we want to be wide, and obviously being able to be good in their moments will hopefully help bridge that gap as they go on up the levels, and obviously towards the top end, where you switch off for a second, you're going to concede a goal. You manage to nick the ball, press high up, you might be able to score a goal. So as a club, we're having a real big focus on them transition moments at the moment. Also within it, 2 sessions a week must be based around the top prospects within the team. So normally there's 2 or 3 top prospects. So even though we're working on the principles of play or on the game model, the thought process behind it is trying to really sort of stress the top prospects. So making sure they're either up against each other or making sure that they're kind of playing a real key role within the session, whether it's pressing the ball, whether it's building from the back, whatever it is, just trying to be clever and trying to find ways to make sure that we're stressing them the whole time. Something else we've added in this year, which has been really positive, and the boys have really took to this, is a TENS program. It's just 10 minutes prior to practice, a player-led session, rather than them come in and just smashing the ball about or having a bit of a mess about, just trying to have a real focus about maybe some areas they want to work on, taking a bit of responsibility and actually putting on little sessions for themselves in groups of 2 or 3 or individually. And it's been great to watch how week 1 and 2, lots of them were just hitting free kicks and that, and now they're actually putting on proper finishing drills, or the defenders are working with each other on their defensive heading and things like that. So that's been a real positive. The top prospects in the clubs, also they have individual development plans, and trying to give them a clear pathway and map it out as best we can. Obviously there's going to be lots of bumps in the road, and we're quite fortunate that we've actually got an individual development coach who works with these boys as well, on the grass, but also he's got a degree in psychology, so working with them away from the pitch, and just trying to give them every opportunity, obviously, to try and develop and try and fulfill their potential. And also, I said it normally on a Monday we do a video session, but for me, not just a video where they have to sit there and watch stuff. Something I've been really trying to focus on is just trying to make it really interactive, trying to get the players involved. And I mean, the picture on the side, we're in a hotel, so we set up a mini pitch in the hotel room and got them to come up with a game plan. So watching a bit of film and then trying to get them to translate it in different ways. Obviously, some kids learn differently, don't they? Some are great at watching a video. Some need to actually be out there doing that. But the whole time, just trying to give them different tools and different ways to obviously try and succeed.
So that's very interesting about the top prospects, and it's amazing that you have actually an individual development coach, because again, like you say, the development of these kids, it's individualized, it's unique, and you really need to cater to everyone, especially if you have someone that, you know, maybe those 1 or 2 guys that really want to break into professional football. That's pretty impressive. I haven't seen that before, at least around here.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'll come back to that question. Someone's asked a question. I'll come back to that in a sec. And then, yeah, just touching again on the IDPs. So they can be great, but obviously it needs to be a player buy-in. It's a living document, so it's always moving, and it really is catered to the individual. So whether they need to be on the pitch more technically, whether they need more work to sort of help improve their mental skills, or whatever it is, maybe it might be an extra gym program to try and make them more robust. And the IDP, it's not always trying to improve their weaknesses. I think as a club and as a group, we're also trying to focus on developing a super strength. So if they're good at finishing, trying to make them great at finishing. For something that I've noticed, I think a lot of the players that have gone on to do well, they're good at most things, but they also have a super strength, something that they're really good at and sort of makes them outstanding. And as I said, they might look different for each player. Just a couple of considerations to kind of wrap this bit up. Obviously, the importance, as you can see, there's quite a lot to try and get into the session. So the importance of how we plan our sessions, and ultimately trying to use that game model and sort of take it, and we're trying to produce players at the end of the day. That awareness of the top prospects. But we had a really good Zoom over the pandemic with Alex Inglethorpe, who's at Liverpool. So obviously there is a focus on the top prospects, but also being aware of the silver medalists, the one who is sort of just below, because these kids are still young. They're going to develop at different rates. And it's quite interesting because he said sometimes the silver medalists are the one who sort of come through at the end because they've been through, maybe they've had more bumps in the road on their journey. Do you know what I mean? They haven't always been the main guy in the group. And you find that sometimes these kids have better work rate, and do you know what I mean? They're able to deal with more when it's chucked at them. So yes, we do have a focus on top prospects in the group, and I think the question was about how do we disguise that? I think it's important that we just try and make everyone feel special and everyone feel important. And as I said, in terms of making sure the top prospects are the focus of it, it might simply be pairing them up against each other. Best striker against our best centre half, making sure he's getting it all the time. And just little things like that, just trying to be as clever as we can. And then the last point, something that we've been really sort of focusing on as a group, is just trying to create a good working environment. Somewhere where they want to come in, they want to learn, but ultimately giving them the opportunities and seeing what they do with it. As I said, that TENS program's been a real bonus for us to see the way they've sort of took to that and sort of run with it. I think that kind of wraps up the stuff on Atlanta United, and kind of what we're doing. As I said, it's quite rigid and quite structured in terms of the game model, the syllabus, how we try and hit certain things at different times throughout the year. But as I said, ultimately we're there to try and produce professional players, and that's sort of one approach. And obviously going on to the next bit, working at West Ham, obviously a Category 1 academy in England, produced a hell of a lot of players over the years, and I was fortunate enough to go through the system myself and obviously return as a coach. And it's a totally different approach. So I mean, it might be quite interesting. So I've just put down some bullet points. I won't spend as long on this one. So it has slightly changed again this year because they've got a new academy director who come in just as I was sort of leaving. But as I said, the same desired outcome is for them trying to produce players. And when we say the IDP is at the forefront of their entire program, it really is. Everything is about the individual player and each individual player's development plan. And every player within the academy will have an individual development plan, and each individual development plan will look completely different to the next. And alongside that, each player had a mentor. And it was quite interesting because it wasn't just coaching staff, it was the sports scientists, it was the chefs, it was the education people. And sometimes just getting a bit of work maybe with someone who's not with you on the pitch all the time has proved to be really powerful. And that was something that I think they did really well, linking the IDP with the mentor program to try and make each player within the club sort of feel really special about themselves. Similar again, the training sessions were designed to try and be built around the best players, individuals. All the training sessions were in tight areas to ensure lots of touches. As a youth team from under 18s below, you weren't allowed to do any team shape or 11v11 stuff within your sessions. That was all on a game day. And the aim was to produce technically gifted players. Ultimately, we weren't there to produce a team, or when people say, oh, it's about the performance and not the result, at West Ham, they really lived and breathed that to the ultimate. The focus was on the performance and not the performance of the team. It was the performance of the individual. So every game, when I had to ring my boss and speak to him, first question wasn't, How did we get on? What was the score? Did we have the best player? And as long as we had the best player on the pitch, he was quite happy. Obviously, as a young coach, you're obviously keen to win, and you want the boys to win because there's a feel-good factor. But the academy director at the time, he said his focus wasn't on the under-18s winning the league or winning the Youth Cup. His focus was getting one player through to the first team. If he gets Declan Rice into the first team, it could be 50 million for the club. And it was really interesting to kind of work that way. And he always said to me, a young player from your team goes up to the first team, what will they get judged on? Will they be judged on whether they can tuck in when the ball's on the other side, or how they're going to play tactically within a group session? Or are they going to get judged on how they can deal with a ball in a tight area or under pressure or hit their passes? So the real focus at the entire club, around the individual, created technically gifted players. And as I said, we really sort of lived and breathed that philosophy. And the session design, the last thing I'll probably touch on here, every session looked the same. Obviously, the physical output was completely different. But every session would start with a rondo. Obviously, for us as coaches, we had to be creative and use mini goals and use different things. And there'd be a technical section, possession, and a small-sided game every session, Monday to Friday. And obviously not being able to do any sort of shape work or 11v11, it really sort of pushed me as a coach to try and get creative. So trying to get that tactical element within your possession. So maybe putting people in certain positions, and certainly within the technical aspect of the session, trying to get some sort of shape and idea stuff into the players within that. And obviously there's lots of trade-offs and there's lots of benefits to working that way, because at times on the weekend we suffered, you could say, but at the end of the day there were some fantastic players, and you're really starting to see obviously a few of them coming through. Grady Diangana, one that I got to work with, just been sold to West Brom for 23 million. Obviously Declan Rice has been flying the flag for the academy over the last few years, and he was one who come through this way. And it's really interesting actually about Declan Rice, because when I said about the silver medalist, he was the silver medalist at West Ham. There was a young lad called Reece Oxford who was ahead of him, made his first team debut at 16. Dec was always sort of below him and not getting up with the first team. It was always Reece, etc. And then just slowly found his way. And I think he's come through with an unbelievable attitude and work ethic, and he's just a real good person around being a good footballer. So certainly coming up that way with that technical ability, but also making sure that as a coach and as a group, we are looking out for the ones who are maybe not judged as the top prospects within the group. Said I wouldn't keep you too long. Just a couple of final thoughts, I suppose, from me. Obviously, I'm still fairly young and kind of learning my way still. So I don't claim to have it completely how I'd want it. But being in and around the game for long enough, just a couple of things that I've kind of noticed about the players who've sort of gone on and done well, and things that I try to do now as a coach. So for me, try and give the players ownership over their own paths and their own career. Just trying to make them accountable, because ultimately we want to try and give them some life skills at the end of the day. They're not all going to have careers in football, and if we can hold them accountable now, hopefully that'll help them further along the line as well. Importance of building relationships. So even if they're not the main person in the team, trying to build good relationships with them. And I think for me, it's been great over this period. I spent more time chatting to them on Zoom and FaceTimes, etc. And I actually got to know my players, the group I've got this year, better than I have any set of players, just from probably spending more time talking about stuff that isn't just related to the pitch or related to football. It was nice getting to know about their families and getting to know about them as people, and being able to set them tasks away from football. I think it also gave me a real insight in terms of who's a good learner, who's quite bright, etc., and who might need a bit of extra help, which maybe you don't always notice on the pitch. And finally, it isn't a one-way fits all approach. I think every kid has a unique journey, and just maybe being aware of that and just trying to cater to them and equip them. I think I put a thing there. Just for me now, I think this is something that I say. obviously important to create a vision, especially out here. Obviously, it's easier when they see their mates going through to the first team, because that should be all the inspiration they need. And then just trying to give them as many of the tools required to succeed. So trying to give them as much as we can, make them feel part of it, and then let them take ownership of their own journey. Because ultimately it's about them sort of grabbing it and running with it. And it's certainly the way that I try to work, to not be on top of them the entire time. We want to try and make ourselves as coaches redundant, don't we, I think, so we can sit back and kind of let them crack on and do what they need to do. And I think that's me. So obviously I've rambled on for quite a bit there. Some of it might be crap. Hopefully there was one or two good points there. And as I said,
for me, there are a couple of insights I hadn't heard about before. I'm sure for others as well. There's actually another question here for you. It's actually put on the chat. Any particular reason why there is no? Sorry, 1 second. Why there is no focus on team shape in West Ham? Can understand not having 11v11 in session, but why not team shape?
Yeah, I really struggled with it, to be honest, when I first went there from Peterborough United. And obviously, I think being in and around the first team environment as well as a player, you spend most of your week focusing on your team shape and your tactics. I just think, as I said, the main focus from the academy director and what he kept hammering down to us was how many touches they're getting within the session. And he just felt stuff in bigger areas, larger areas. These players are getting less touches, and at times it was silly, some of the areas we were working in. But ultimately, he's trying to give them touches on the ball, keep them under intense pressure for as much of the session as possible, and just hope that technical ability is good enough to sort of take them through. Now, look, don't get me wrong. We spent so much time in the video room. We were really lucky. We've got a fantastic tactics room, and we used to do lots of exercises in the afternoon where they could come and do the coach paint. They could move players, draw things on, and obviously within them sort of sessions, that we were hoping that would be enough to kind of get them through. And look, in and around it, there were still certain things that we had to do that we tried to hit every game. If the cross was coming in, we had to try and get 3 players in the box. Whenever we're building an attack, we had to try and create a box at the back. Just different things like that we tried to get on them. But ultimately, the focus was on every single player as an individual, and just getting them as many touches and as much time on the ball under pressure as possible.
Very interesting stuff, Jack. Actually, you know, it sparked a couple of things for me also to ask you, especially now that we've seen, you know, I'd say 2 different approaches. What do you, grabbing what you've learned in your experience in West Ham and now the experience you're having in Atlanta, what do you see for yourself?
Yeah, do you know what? It's been really interesting. For me, I would say somewhere probably completely in the middle. This is probably the best way to work. I think I love the individual focus, and I love working in tight areas and trying to make technically gifted players, because it's fun to watch. It's fun to work that way, and obviously the sessions are great. But I think it gives them a bit extra if they do have a better understanding maybe of their roles and responsibilities in and out of possession, because sometimes by having that sort of base, it gives them a chance to maybe play a bit better on the weekends, you know what I mean? And ultimately they will be getting judged on match days probably more than they will be in training sessions. So probably somewhere completely in the middle of having a high technical focus within your sessions, but also giving them enough tools and enough understanding of how they're meant to play, especially towards the top end. I think at the bottom end, if you're working with 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds right up to possibly even 14, I think there should be more of a focus on that technical side and giving them the tools and making them comfortable on the ball. And then I suppose as you get up, the tactical side becomes more and more important, because even with my group now, obviously I'm authentic. I still try and work how I want to work. So I do spend a lot of time, as I said, with them in tight areas, etc., etc. I try not to talk too much, so they get opportunity to get their touches on the ball. But once they leave me and they're up with the USL, then ultimately they're going to be spending so much more time on that tactical side and trying to understand their positions and roles and responsibilities. And I think the biggest thing in England as well that the academy director said, he said there's no point us working a certain way or on a certain formation, because ultimately the manager's probably only going to be in the job 8 months. So these kids throughout their entire career, yes, it's great if you can link it all the way from top to bottom, like we're trying to do at Atlanta. But I think in the Premier League, there's such a quick turnover of managers and styles and philosophies. It's hard to kind of filter it all the way down.
Yeah, for sure. Then you create a project that builds certain type of players that at the end of the project you don't pick up the fruit because the management that was there to support that project is not there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very interesting dynamic. I guess it's not a right one as long as you're consistent. But also wanted to ask you, especially since you've been on both ends of it, your thoughts on video and in general, team talks, video sessions. Obviously you've been a part of it as a player at the highest level, and now also as a coach. What insights would you have for someone that maybe didn't play at an elite level?
Yeah.
In terms of video, when to go in, when to go out. The same for halftime talks, pre-game, anything that you could provide.
Yeah, it's a good one. I suppose as a coach, you just got to feel it, haven't you? Do you know what I mean? I think everyone's different, and some ways will work great for one coach and not so great for another. I think for me, in terms of talking to the players pre-match, I try and do as much of that throughout the week, just filtering little bits into them. So when it comes to a weekend, I try and keep it really clean. Might have one focus in possession, one focus out of possession, and then just something in general. Just try and keep it to 2 or 3 points and nothing more. And then the same at half time. I normally give them a bit of a break, let them have a breather, gather their thoughts, and then just try and get in and out as quick as possible. Just be clean, 2 or 3 points, and then maybe in and around that, because I'm keeping it so short and trying to keep it clean, there might be 1 or 2 individuals that maybe need a little bit more, and it could be as simple as just spending a little bit of extra time with 1 or 2 of them, or maybe one of the units. In terms of the video stuff, I was quite lucky. I kind of grew up with that. I played under Sam Allardyce, who was like the pioneer of sort of video analysis, etc., etc. And his attention to detail going into any game was incredible. You knew exactly who you'd be up against. You knew who you'd be playing, what was expected of you in possession, out of possession, set pieces, and he used to hit home so hard on the video. So I kind of grew up on that stuff. But what I've found working with the kids, I don't think we can over sort of give them too much information. What's the saying? Paralysis by analysis, isn't it? I think if you spend too long doing it, it can sometimes have a negative effect. So what I've found, I try and, as I said, make it interactive, try and make them feel part of it, and sometimes try and lead them to an answer that I want to get, just by either asking questions or getting them to actually stand up and present parts of the video session, which has also been really powerful. But yeah, I try not spend too long on it. Try and get creative. Try and maybe stick a bit of music onto it to make it exciting. It's actually something I learned. I went to the Saracens rugby club in England, and most successful team over the past 10, 15 years. And their team meetings were incredible. The way they would jump from using humour to competitive stuff to then being really serious and having some actual analysis stuff on the opposition was just great. And I found the way they managed to kind of link it all, it really got me thinking and made me try to be a bit more creative in terms of maybe how we deliver some of the video stuff, because it's boring just sitting there, just watching a screen and just being spoken to. So
No, yeah, and more so now, you know, you have so many things to get distracted on nowadays, you know, with your phone, computer.
yeah.
Attention spans are not getting any better. So can definitely see that. Last question for you, Jack. So before this West Ham experience, before the Atlanta United experience, I know you just mentioned Big Sam, but
Yeah.
any other coaches that maybe got your head going into that direction, or any experience, whether it was an injury or a course maybe that you took that you said, okay, maybe I should look into this?
Yeah, probably all of the above. I mean, look, I knew of my knee injury. As I said, the initial injury was when I was 20 years old, so I knew I wasn't going to probably get a full career. And I started doing. I mean, I've done my first coaching badge when I was 16. By the age of 23, I had my B license, and then by 25, I was already on my A license. So I was kind of, in terms of the coaching qualifications, I knew I had to do something and try to get ahead of the game in terms of that. And I think for me, as I said, I am obsessed by the game. I love it, and I couldn't see myself working in a normal job or not being able to sort of work in and around something that I love. So I think the coaching was always sort of a journey for me in the back of my head, and I think the fact that I did get to play at a high level and under some incredible people has sort of really shaped me, and how I actually coach. And I mean, it's not like I'm trying to copy one person. I think for me, it was kind of trying to take little bits that I like off certain people and trying to put them into my own way and trying to be authentic with it. And I mean, I'll give you some examples. As I said, Big Sam, his attention to detail was just phenomenal. You went into every game knowing exactly what to expect. Gianfranco Zola, when you talk about people skills, incredible. Obviously, one of the best players to ever play in the Premier League, coming as a coach. And I was a young player at the time on the fringes of the first team, but 3-4 times a week after a session, he would spend time with just me doing some technical work, trying to help me and trying to improve me. So by the time he actually put me into the first team, I was ready to run through a brick wall for him, because he had actually took time to sort of spend with me. I mean, Chris Coleman at Wales was just, you'd come out of the room and you just feel inspired. The way he'd talk to you, the way he would do his team talks, his video stuff. He just, the passion that would come out of him in every single talk was just unbelievable. And you can see what he'd done with that Welsh group, getting them to the semi-finals of the Euros. Yeah. And then probably the last one, I had a month on loan at Bournemouth, and I got to work with Eddie Howe. And his sessions were just class. Like, you wanted to be out on the training pitch. It was sharp. It was intense. It was challenging, but it was great just to be out there on the training field each and every day. And you wanted to be out there, and you wanted to do these sessions. And once again, you can see what he's done with Bournemouth, obviously getting them up to the Premier League and keeping them there for so long. I'm a bit disappointed last season, but I'm sure he's going to bounce back with a big job. And then,
hopefully, I think he deserves it. And the bits I've seen of his work, it's exactly how you describe. Very engaging, very demanding. You know, in your face. You know, even for reflection. I think he'll get another go at it.
But yeah, no, he was top. And I mean, I even though my career was so short, I was very. I mean, I went through so much in such a short period. Getting relegated from the Premier League, dealing with a long-term injury. I lost my dad when I was 20 as well. Winning promotion, playing in a team every week, to having to fight to get back in the team. So all them experiences shaped me as a man and shaped me as a person. And now, in terms of being a coach, I'd like to think I'm in quite a good position to be able to maybe offer advice in certain situations and things like that. So hopefully I'm in a good position to have a real good crack at it. And I think if you're passionate about it and you've got that burning desire to want to get better, then I think you've always give yourself half a chance, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely the first step, that desire and that passion, and everything else, it's just a matter of time. And whatever chances that come up in the way. Jack, I can't think of a better way to end the webinar than those last couple pieces.
No.
Just want to thank you for your time now with us here. Everyone that asked questions, we actually got a comment. This is really insightful, possibly the most cleanest, simplest, and neatest presentation I've seen in all lockdown. So
Yeah.
I guess you are
appreciate that.
you're not doing so bad. So yeah, thank you so much on behalf of myself, Nico, who wasn't able to be here today, but also everyone that's present here today.
No, I really appreciate it. Thanks very much for having me, guys. And yeah, no, I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah, for sure. And like I promised, unfortunately, we weren't able to invite you to Miami this year due to circumstances, but hopefully there's always next year, like they say.
Yeah.
So hopefully everyone can come closer to normal conditions, and we're all safe and sound by then, and we can do that. For anyone out there that's still joined with us in this webinar, the registration is coming out midweek to end of the week for the convention in December. And if you're part of this webinar, you can use a discount code JCollison for a 10% discount for attending the convention. Jack, again, thank you so much, man. We'll definitely be in touch, and appreciate your time, and stay safe over there.
And you, my man. Take care, Eric.